Chapter 104. After Su Qin and the others returned to the East Palace, they found that the number of forbidden army in the East Palace had increased by several times. Obviously, the assassination of the Crown Prince made the Emperor of Tang realize that even in the Imperial Palace, it was not absolutely safe. In addition, Su Qin also noticed that everyone who had experienced the assassination, including the Crown Prince and the Crown Prince's confidants, were temporarily unable to leave the palace. The reason given by the Forbidden Army was that the palace was conducting a strict investigation, and they might encounter assassins if they went out at this time. But Su Qin obviously saw the problem. This time, all the assassins were from the Nanming diplomatic mission. Logically speaking, the reason should have been found, and there was no need to investigate the palace. Because the assassination originated from Nanming, it had nothing to do with the palace. But the Emperor of Tang still gave the order. The only possibility was that he did not want the assassination to spread at this time. It seems that the Emperor of Tang, that old fox, is planning something again. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated, and in the blink of an eye he had guessed most of the Emperor of Tang's purpose. However, although Su Qin was aware of these things, he was not interested in them. For Su Qin, all schemes were as fragile as thin paper in the face of absolute strength, unable to withstand a single blow. Instead of focusing on these, it was more convenient to improve his strength. As for the large number of forbidden army in the East Palace, everyone was forbidden to enter or leave. Maybe this was useful to others, but how could it stop Su Qin? 2 hours later, Su Qin's figure flashed, easily passing through the heavy guards and quietly leaving the East Palace. Let's sign in at Taiji Palace today. Su Qin's mind moved, and he appeared in front of Taiji Palace. Taiji Palace was the place where the Emperor of Tang and all the civil and military officials discussed politics. Logically speaking, it should have a lot of Dao accumulation. System, sign in. Su Qin looked up at the majestic Taiji Palace and said in his heart, "Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. Received, 9 in Sutra." 9 in Sutra? A smile emerged on Su Qin's face. He had been signing in at the Imperial Palace for almost half a year, and he finally managed to sign in this absolute in technique. It was said that the 9 in manual was a unique skill created by someone who was in charge of the Imperial Palace in the previous dynasty. It was said that it could condense 9 kinds of in forces. In terms of level, the 9 in manual was completely above the lunar body refining art. The Tai-in body refining art could only gather the power of Tai-in. When cultivated to the limit, one could only gather the power of Tai-in. However, the 9 in Sutra could condense a total of 9 types of in energy. The difference between them was clear at a glance. Not bad, not bad. If I still can't sign in, I'm prepared to use other ultimate in techniques instead. Su Qin nodded slightly. In his speculation, the 9 in scripture and 9 yang divine art were the most suitable, but it didn't mean that Su Qin only had the 9 in scripture as a choice. After signing in for so many years, Su Qin didn't know how many ultimate in cultivation techniques he had obtained, and among them, there were some that were comparable to the 9 in scripture. Just as Su Qin was thinking, all kinds of information about the 9 in scripture poured into Su Qin's mind. After a while, Su Qin opened his eyes, and a satisfied look appeared on his face. After going back, I will start to cultivate the 9 in scripture, and then temper my body with the 9 yang divine art. Let's see if I can achieve the 4th transformation of my body. Su Qin thought silently. From grade 9 to Venerable Arhat, Su Qin's body had transformed 3 times. The first time was when he used Invincible Vajra divine art and Lunar body refining art to enhance his body to the level of a grade 1 great grandmaster. The first time was in the back mountain of the Shaolin Temple, where he strengthened his body with the power of the seal left by Te Arahan. The third time was when Su Qin broke through to the Arhat realm. At the final leap, his body, divine sense, and internal strength all burst forth. Since these 3 transformations, even if Su Qin entered the 3rd heavenly layer and his strength skyrocketed, he still couldn't achieve the effect of transformation. Now, Su Qin is fusing 9 yang divine art and 9 in scripture together to see if he can transform his body like when he was in grade 9. Just as Su Qin was about to return to the East Palace, his expression suddenly changed and he looked at a certain position in the Imperial Palace. 6 grade 1 great grandmasters left the Imperial Palace? Su Qin touched his chin, a thoughtful look in his eyes. When the 6 grade 1 great grandmasters left the Imperial Palace, they tried to conceal their aura, but they could hide it from outsiders, so how could they hide it from Su Qin? Interesting. Is the Emperor of Tang going to make a move? Su Qin guessed in his heart. In the entire Imperial Palace, only the Emperor of Tang can order 6 grade 1 great grandmasters at the same time. Under the strict blockade of the entire Imperial Palace, outsiders can't enter, and the people inside can't go out. For these 6 grade 1 great grandmasters to leave at this time, there is no other possibility other than following the orders of the Emperor of Tang. At the same time, in a mansion in Xianxia City, the white-robed man looked up at the sky and frowned. As the guardian of Nanming's bright gown guard, the white-robed man has a high position and power. If it were not related to a certain plan of the Ming Emperor, it would be impossible for him to come to Xianxia City in person. It must be known that Xianxia City is the capital of the Empire of Tang. Who knows how much of the Empire of Tang's heritage is hidden there? Even if the white-robed man is confident, he is not sure that he will succeed and retreat. But the white-robed man has no choice. If the Ming Emperor asked him to come, then he must come. Even if he dies, he must die in Xianxia City. It should be about time. Why hasn't the news come out yet? The white-robed man only felt a faint palpitating illusion. At this moment, the chubby businessman ran in and respectfully said, "Greetings, Guardian." What the hell is going on? The white-robed man looked at the chubby businessman and frowned. Is there a fight in the Imperial Palace? Lord Town Guardian. I don't know. I haven't received any news yet. The chubby businessman was also very puzzled. No news? The white-robed man frowned. Did the Crown Prince leave the Black Tortoise Gate? When the chubby businessman heard this, he immediately replied, "No." When these words came out, the white-robed man's expression changed slightly. It shouldn't be. According to previous intelligence, the Crown Prince will accompany the Crown Princess back to the family Su at this time of year, the white-robed man muttered to himself. Maybe he was delayed by something? The chubby businessman couldn't help but guess. The more the white-robed man thought about it, the more he felt that something was wrong. There was no delay in the past years, but this year it was delayed? If the assassination had really started, the Imperial Palace wouldn't be so peaceful, unless someone deliberately concealed the news and delayed the time. The white-robed man's mind raced, and finally his face turned pale. Not good. There's a change. The white-robed man immediately got up and prepared to leave Xianxia City. However, the white-robed man hadn't gone far. Then, he felt 6 terrifying auras appear and envelop him from all directions, sealing off all corners of the mansion. I was wondering who it was. So it's those mad dogs of the Imperial Secret Guards? The gate of the mansion was pushed open, and a feminine eunuch in a red eunuch uniform slowly walked in. To read the unmodified content, please go to Vinegar Studies. Chapter 105. Red-clothed eunuch? The white-robed man's expression was extremely ugly. In the Emperor of Tang's palace, the eunuchs who can wear red official robes are basically grade 1 great grandmasters. Of course, there are exceptions. For example, although eunuch Hong next to imperial concubine Li is grade 2, he was still given a red official robe. But such examples are relatively rare. And at this time, the white-robed man could feel that the 6 auras that enveloped the entire mansion were all grade 1 great grandmasters. I didn't expect it to be the guardian of the genie guard. The red-clothed eunuch immediately recognized the white-robed man's identity. Although the Southern Ming Empire's embroidered uniform guard was feared by the other countries, it wasn't as if the other countries didn't put up any resistance. Especially the Tang Empire, which had investigated the upper echelons of the embroidered uniform guard thoroughly. The Emperor of Tang has good means, the white-robed man smiled, and his expression suddenly calmed down. You want to break your heart and commit suicide? The red-clothed eunuch who walked in smiled disdainfully, took a step forward, and appeared beside the white-robed man, and then gently pressed his 5 fingers. Wang! The white-robed man only felt his vision begin to blur, and his heart that was about to break began to slowly recover. You! Before the white-robed man could speak, he fell into a coma. East Palace. In the right spring square. Su Qin sat cross-legged, and the true essence in his body slowly circulated according to the 9 Yin Daoist scripture, condensing the extreme Yin force. After a long time, Su Qin slowly opened his eyes. In an instant, with Su Qin as the center, the temperature within a radius of tens of meters dropped rapidly, as if he had instantly arrived at the Arctic ice field. Ha! Su Qin frowned. Suddenly, the originally falling temperature continued to rise, and in the blink of an eye, it returned to normal. This 9 Yin Daoist scripture is a bit interesting. Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated as he thought silently in his heart. Compared to the 9 Yang divine art, the 9 Yin Sutra was even more bizarre. It was the complete opposite of the 9 Yang divine art. However, isn't this what I want? A smile emerged on Su Qin's face. With his current body that had undergone 3 transformations, ordinary Yin and Yang energy was completely useless. It couldn't even affect Su Qin's body, let alone improve it. In 2 days at most, I will be able to cultivate the 9 Yin Sutra to the great accomplishment stage and gather the 9 types of Yin energy. Su Qin calculated in his mind. If an ordinary cultivator wanted to cultivate the 9 Yin true scripture to the Desheng realm, they would not be able to do so without dozens of years or even hundreds of years. Moreover, this was based on the premise that the cultivator's aptitude was innately compatible with the 9 Yin true scripture. But Su Qin was different. As the venerable Arhat of the third heaven, he had a commanding position. Coupled with the system's instilling of all the essences of the 9 Yin Sutra, even 2 days felt long to Su Qin. The next day, Su Qin arrived at Cheng'en Hall. "Third brother, you're here?" Crown Prince Li Xing walked over with a face full of joy. After Yun Yang drank the medicine prescribed by third brother, her body has obviously improved. Even the imperial physician by father's side found it unbelievable. Crown Prince Li Xing looked at Su Qin with eyes full of gratitude. "Is that so?" Su Qin did not feel much. Helping his little sister Su Yueyun to get rid of the Yin Qi was as easy as lifting a finger. It was not a big deal at all. "That's right. Do you still remember the assassination yesterday?" Crown Prince Li Xing suddenly thought of something. He looked around and whispered, "What's wrong?" Su Qin asked casually. "When I went to see father in the morning, I felt that father seemed to be in a good mood. It should have something to do with the assassination of the Nanming diplomatic mission yesterday." Crown Prince Li Xing told him his guess. Although the Emperor of Tang did not tell him clearly at that time, he did give him a few reminders. "I see." Su Qin nodded slightly. It seems that the 6th grade 1 great grandmasters who left the imperial palace yesterday caught a big fish. Otherwise, according to the Emperor of Tang's temperament, if he did not really have a big harvest, he would not behave like this. Next, Su Qin chatted with Crown Prince Li Xing for a while. In fact, it was mainly Crown Prince Li Xing who was talking, and Su Qin just listened casually. And Crown Prince Li Xing mostly talked about the imperial court, such as which minister came forward to impeach him, obviously, although the Emperor of Tang was persistent and he successfully sat on the position of Crown Prince. It was obvious that this position was not very stable and had even been questioned by many. "If you become the emperor in the future, what do you want to do?" Su Qin listened for a while and asked casually. Although Li Xing carried nearly 1/10 of the Empire of Tang's destiny, as long as he does not die, the future throne will basically be Li Xing's. But Su Qin also wants to know what Li Xing plans for the future. "Third brother, you must not say this kind of thing outside in the future. Father Emperor's health has just improved," Crown Prince Li Xing said quickly. Su Qin heard this and shook his head slightly. Su Qin is very clear about the Emperor of Tang's health. If it weren't for a peak grade 1 great grandmaster who was willing to exchange his life for his life, he would have died long ago. But even so, the Emperor of Tang will not live for long. Even Venerable Arhat has a Shoyuan limit, let alone an emperor. The improvement in Crown Prince Li Sheng's eyes was nothing more than a momentary recovery. Half an hour later, Su Qin returned to the right spring square again. It's almost time. Strive to cultivate the 9 Yin Taoist scripture to great accomplishment, and then complete the 4th transformation of the body in one go. Su Qin sat cross-legged, slowly closed his eyes, and began to cultivate. At the same time, Nanming's capital, inside the imperial palace, Ming Emperor sat high on the dragon throne, looking at the intelligence in his hand. The assassination failed? Ming Emperor whispered to himself. His voice did not fluctuate, as if he was talking about something that had nothing to do with him. Reporting to your majesty. In addition to the failure of the mission, the stronghold of the brocade-gowned guards in Chang'an, as well as the town governor, have all lost contact. The commander of the brocade-gowned guards, wearing a flying suit, said with cold sweat on his head. Not only did the assassination fail, even the people were captured alive. Ming Emperor put down the intelligence in his hand, looked at the commander, and said lightly, "Your Majesty, please forgive me. I deserve to die." The commander of the brocade-gowned guards knelt on the ground with a thud and said in a trembling voice. In Nanming, the name brocade-gowned guards was like a ghost. Many people were in awe and fear. Even the princes and ministers in the imperial court were afraid of the brocade-gowned guards. But only the commander himself knew that the so-called brocade-gowned guards was just a dog under Ming Emperor. If this dog was useful, Ming Emperor would not be stingy with rewards. But if it was useless, he would change it for another dog. Perhaps the brocade-gowned guards still existed, but no one knew whether he was the commander or not. I will go to Chang'an personally and prepare for the assassination. The commander of the brocade-gowned guards touched the ground with his forehead and said quickly, "No need." After a long time, Ming Emperor's voice slowly came. Since the first assassination failed, there is no need to try again. Ming Emperor paused for a while and continued, "I remember that some time ago, a prince of the Empire of Tang wanted to contact me and cooperate with me. To read the unmodified content, please go to vinegar/literature. Chapter 106. As soon as Ming Emperor finished his words, the commander of the brocade guards, who was kneeling on the ground, immediately replied, "Your Majesty, there is such a thing." At that time, the Emperor of Tang had just appointed the crown prince. This prince was not reconciled, so he contacted Nanming and wanted to use the power of Nanming to ascend to the throne. The commander of the brocade guards said, "Now you reply to him." Ming Emperor leaned slightly on the dragon throne and said calmly, "I agree." As soon as these words came out, the commander of the brocade guard's expression changed. Helping the Emperor of Tang's prince ascend to the throne was not in Nanming's interest. For Nanming, the more chaotic the Empire of Tang was, the better. If a new emperor ascended to the throne and unified all forces, it would be a disaster rather than a blessing. I know what you are thinking. Ming Emperor glanced at the commander of the brocade guards and said softly, "I only agreed to let him ascend to the throne, but no one can guarantee how long he can sit on the throne." "As you wish. I will contact him right away." The commander of the brocade guards' heart skipped a beat and said hurriedly. When the commander of the brocade guards completely left, Ming Emperor, who was sitting high on the dragon throne, slowly stood up and walked out of the hall. The Empire of Tang, The Emperor of Tang's palace. Right spring square of the East Palace. Su Qin sat cross-legged. His aura flowed, but it did not leak out at all. After a while, Su Qin slowly opened his eyes. "It's finally done." Su Qin raised his left hand. 9 wisps of extreme Yin force were constantly circling and colliding between his fingers, emitting waves of palpitating waves. When the 9 Yin manual is fully cultivated, I can turn the surrounding dozens of meters into an extremely cold ice domain with a raise of my hand to restrict and suppress the enemy. It's quite interesting. Su Qin sensed it carefully and nodded slightly. Compared with the extreme yang of the 9 yang divine skill, which could burn and burn everything, the 9 Yin manual was more like a spring breeze and drizzle, silently moistening things. Oftentimes, the enemy would be corroded by the power of the 9 yin before they even knew what was happening. But no matter if it's 9 yin or 9 yang, they're all just means to me. What's truly important is the tempering of the body by the supreme yang energy and the supreme yin energy. Su Qin's eyes lit up. Now that both the 9 yin divine technique and the 9 yang divine technique had been completed, it was time to prepare for the transformation of his physical body. Let's leave the palace first and find a random place to talk. Su Qin sat cross-legged, his thoughts fluctuating. Thinking of this, Su Qin restrained his aura and stepped out of the imperial palace and Chang and city. This place is not bad. Su Qin found a valley more than 20 miles away from Chang and city. This valley was surrounded by beautiful mountains and clear waters. Vaguely, it was the place where the yuan qi of heaven and earth gathered. Here it is. Su Qin floated into the valley. Let's set up a heaven and earth formation first to prevent anyone from disturbing us. Su Qin's mind moved, and a hidden heaven and earth formation enveloped the entire valley. With Su Qin's strength, even during the breakthrough period, no foreign objects could disturb him. But it was better to be as quiet as possible. Anyway, Su Qin still had dozens of such heaven and earth formations. If he wanted to set them up, he could do it with a thought. It was not troublesome at all. After setting up the heaven and earth formation, Su Qin found a random place in the valley and sat cross-legged. Although there are no martial arts legends on this continent, there are martial arts legends outside the continent and in the endless deep sea. Su Qin thought silently. He was not in a hurry to start. Instead, he adjusted his state and tried to achieve the transformation of his physical body in one go. For example, the founder of the Empire of Tang and the ancestors of other countries were more or less related to the existence of martial arts legends. These martial arts legends crossed the sea in search of longevity. They might come back at any time. If I don't have enough strength to deal with them by then, I'm afraid I'll be at a disadvantage. Su Qin suddenly felt a sense of urgency. Let's begin. Su Qin raised his hands. 9 wisps of supreme yang energy wrapped around the 5 fingers of his right hand, and 9 wisps of supreme yin energy wrapped around the 5 fingers of his left hand. If he wanted yin and yang to coexist and reach the level of tempering his physical body, he had to use the eye of truth to observe his own body. This was also the reason why no martial artist in this world was like Su Qin, who strengthened his body with the power of supreme yang and supreme yin. It was not that they did not want to, but they did not dare. Although the powers of yin and yang coexisted, they also restrained each other at the same time. Once they coexisted in the body, if there was any carelessness, the balance between the two would be broken, and the result would be extremely tragic. Only Su Qin could observe everything in his body with the eye of truth at all times and maintain the balance of yin and yang, so he was not afraid of this. Otherwise, if it were any other martial artist, even a martial arts legend, they would have a headache and even be seriously injured if they were not careful. Buzz. Just as Su Qin slowly urged, the 9 wisps of supreme yang and supreme yin energy between his 10 fingers began to spread and spread at a moderate pace. Su Qin only felt his body go numb and limp, as if he had been struck by lightning and sunk deep into a sea of thunder. At this moment, if anyone was here, they would be shocked to find that Su Qin's body was full of 2 completely opposite forces. These 2 forces constantly collided and slowly merged, and finally gave birth to a trace of inexplicable aura that constantly merged into Su Qin's body. As expected, the power of yin and yang still has a miraculous effect on the body. Su Qin felt the gradual improvement of his physical body and was overjoyed. This degree of improvement almost made Su Qin think that he had returned to the time when he advanced by leaps and bounds. Time passed. In the blink of an eye, 2 hours had passed. At this moment, the aura on Su Qin's body gradually calmed down. It's about time. If I continue, I'm afraid my body will be damaged. Su Qin knew the principle of gradual improvement and immediately stopped cultivating. I'll come back tomorrow. Su Qin breathed a sigh of relief and got up to return to the East Palace's right spring square. In the following time, in addition to signing in every day, Su Qin would take 2 hours to temper his body here. 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, until a month later. In the valley, Su Qin sat cross-legged, and wisps of extreme yin and extreme yang forces constantly collided and lingered in his body, and finally slowly merged, giving birth to a new inexplicable aura that seeped into Su Qin's body. I've reached my limit. Su Qin slowly opened his eyes, and his thoughts fluctuated. In fact, as early as 10 days ago, Su Qin had already felt that the transformation of his body had begun to slow down, but until today, this transformation had completely stopped. Although Su Qin felt that it was a pity, he had already expected this. Now, how strong is my body? Su Qin stretched out his right hand and exerted a little force. Suddenly, a faint golden color flashed on the surface of his skin. This faint golden color was not the same bronze color as the invincible Vajra divine art. It was more like the golden color of the Buddha golden body in the depths of Su Qin's eyebrows. Golden body? So my current physical body already has some of the power of the golden body. Su Qin inexplicably exclaimed in his heart. To read the unmodified content, please go to Vinegar, Literature, Learning. Chapter 107. Outside Chang and City. In a valley somewhere. Su Qin sat cross-legged, carefully feeling the difference between his body and before the transformation. My strength has increased by at least 2 to 3 times. A smile appeared on Su Qin's face. He was very satisfied. He now had a feeling that without the help of true essence and divine will, he could punch through a small hill with just the strength of his body. It was incredible. One had to know that at his level, even the slightest increase in strength was extremely difficult, let alone increasing it explosively by several times. Many venerable Arhat martial arts legends were stuck in the same place for decades, unable to make any progress. Su Qin, who had entered the venerable Arhat realm for less than 10 years, had already stepped into the third heaven and transformed his body 4 times. It was unprecedented, at least not on this continent. In addition to strength, my defense has also improved greatly. Su Qin raised his left hand, pulled up his sleeve, and revealed his slender arm. Then, he casually swung his right hand, and a subtle sword light flashed and fell silently on his left arm. The power of this subtle sword light was completely restrained. If it was in the outside world, it could easily cut down a section of the city wall and destroy the city. But at this moment, when it landed on Su Qin's slender arm, it only left a barely visible white mark. And after this white mark appeared, it disappeared at a speed visible to the naked eye. In an instant, it was restored to its original state. Not bad, not bad. Su Qin nodded slightly. According to Su Qin's guess, his body at this moment was enough to block the attack of a martial artist who had just entered the martial arts legend realm. In other words, even if Su Qin stood there motionless and let a first heaven legend attack him, it would be like a breeze blowing on his face. He would not care at all. Most importantly, through this transformation, a trace of the metal element has been born. Su Qin's eyes turned slightly and fell on his arm again. He saw faint traces of gold flowing on the surface of his skin. The metal element was immortal. Regardless of whether it was the Buddhist golden body or the Taoist Dharma body, when cultivated to the extreme, they were all related to the metal attribute. The trace of metal element in Su Qin's body was enough to prove that Su Qin was on the right path and that he was searching in the right direction. Unfortunately, these strands of gold attribute are too little. If I want to attain the level of that golden Buddha in my ancestral aperture, then I have to transform at least 100 times before there's hope? Su Qin rubbed his forehead and sighed. However, although Su Qin felt a little regretful, he was not depressed. He had enough time now. With a lifespan of 1,000 years, even if he improved a little every 10 years, it was more than enough. My current fighting ability should be comparable to a martial arts legend of the fourth heaven, right? Su Qin's thoughts fluctuated as his eyes lit up. Realms were realms. Killing was killing. Some martial artists were good at attacking. They were often able to defeat those who were stronger than them and fight those who were stronger than them. Of course, If the difference in realms is very big, such as a Grade 1 Great Grandmaster fighting against a Grade 3 martial artist, even if the Grade 3 martial artist is good at attacking, the Grade 1 Great Grandmaster can easily suppress him. Throughout the world, there are very few martial artists who can defeat those who are stronger than them. Not even 1 in a million people can do it. Every one of them is blessed by luck and will have extraordinary achievements in the future. Now that the transformation of my body is complete, it's time to prepare for the breakthrough to the 4th heavenly layer. Su Qin's eyes narrowed as he made a decision in his heart. Originally, he was already at peak 3rd heavenly layer. The reason why he delayed until now was nothing more than waiting for his body to transform. Now that he has done it, he naturally has to prepare for the breakthrough. At the same time, outside the Imperial Palace, inside the Qin Palace, Prince Sun, who was wearing a brocade robe, had a gloomy face. Imperial Father has already begun to beat me. Prince Sun's face was extremely ugly. Some time ago, Prince Sun discovered that some of the ministers who supported him were transferred away one after another. They were either far away from the imperial court or sent to remote areas. If it was 1 or 2 of them, it may be a coincidence, but with more than a dozen of them in a row, if Prince Sun still can't react, he would be really stupid. But why does Imperial Father like that bastard? Prince Sun's eyes were bloodshot, and his face was full of unwillingness. Even if the Emperor of Tang is an old age, he is still the Emperor and the Master of the Empire of Tang. If he wants to suppress a prince, it's just a matter of a thought. Prince Sun even guessed that if it weren't for the Emperor of Tang still holding a trace of father-son affection, he would have been transferred to a remote corner to be an idle prince. At this moment, a middle-aged counselor hurried over. "Your Highness! Your Highness!" The counselor walked not far from Prince Sun and quickly said, "There is news from Nanming." "Nanming?" Prince Sun's spirit shook. "All of you can leave now." Prince Sun glanced at the maids on both sides and lightly said, Suddenly, only Prince Sun and the middle-aged counselor were left in the hall. What did Nanming say? Prince Sun took a deep breath and stared at the counselor. "Your Highness, Ming Emperor has agreed to support Your Highness to sit on the throne." The middle-aged counselor carefully said. Prince Sun's face lit up. What he was most worried about was that Nanming would look down on him as a prince. But now that Ming Emperor has agreed, it's clear that he is ready to bet on him. What are the conditions? Prince Sun calmed himself down and asked. As the Prince of the Empire of Tang, Prince Sun naturally knows that there is no such thing as a free price in this world. Even relatives can scheme against each other, let alone between 2 countries. Ming Emperor said that after Your Highness ascends to the throne, he needs to send 800,000 sets of armor to Nanming and borrow the Northern Song dynasty. The middle-aged counselor bowed and said, 800,000 sets of armor? Prince Sun's face changed. The Empire of Tang's armor is world famous. Together with the Meng Yuan Empire's cavalry, they are known as the 2 major weapons of war. Nanming has been coveting them for who knows how long. Unfortunately, only the Empire of Tang knows about the craftsmanship of the armor. Even if Nanming gets some armor from the battlefield, it's useless. Prince Sun expected Nanming to want the armor, but he didn't expect the other party to ask for such an exorbitant price. As for borrowing the Northern Song dynasty, it doesn't matter. Tell Ming Emperor. I agree. Prince Sun gritted his teeth and said after thinking for a long time. As long as he can ascend to the throne, let alone 800,000 sets of armor, even if the price is higher, Prince Sun can only agree. Because he has no choice. Since he chose the path of fighting for the throne, only by living can he have everything. Your Highness. The middle-aged counselor hesitated and said, Ming Emperor's means are unfathomable, Your Highness must be careful. The middle-aged counselor couldn't help but say, I naturally know. Prince Sun slowly got up and paced back and forth a few steps. You can go now. During this time, don't make any moves. Prince Sun sat back down and looked at the middle-aged counselor and said in a deep voice. Go to vinegar #lu #air #when #shui. Chapter 108. Imperial Palace. When Su Qin returned here, he didn't return to the right spring square immediately. Instead, he went to the crop altar. Congratulations to the host for signing in successfully. Received, innate spirit liquid. A cold, mechanical voice sounded in Su Qin's ears. Innate spirit liquid? Not bad, not bad. Su Qin nodded slightly. In terms of effectiveness, the innate spirit liquid is definitely the most suitable treasure for Su Qin at this stage. So, Su Qin returned to the right spring square. The right spring square was a residence that Crown Prince Li Sheng specially gave to Su Qin. It was larger than the Su mansion, and the environment inside was also good. Su Qin lived comfortably there. In the afternoon, Su Yueyun asked the maid to invite Su Qin to Cheng'en Hall. Since the assassination attempt on the Imperial Palace, Su Yueyun has been staying in the East Palace and can't go anywhere. Fortunately, Su Qin was there and they could chat occasionally. When Su Qin arrived at Cheng'en Hall, not long after, the Emperor of Tang also came over. No need to salute. Here, I am not the Emperor. The Emperor of Tang waved his hand and said indifferently. Crown Prince Li Sheng and Su Yueyun looked at each other and could only bite the bullet and sit at the same table as the Emperor of Tang. After they ate for a while, the Emperor of Tang suddenly glanced at Su Qin and asked casually, "How long has little brother family Su been in Chang?" "Less than a year." Su Qin didn't even raise his eyes and replied casually. Perhaps for others, the Emperor of Tang is a high and mighty emperor who controls the life and death of hundreds of millions of people in the Empire of Tang. But in Su Qin's eyes, the Emperor of Tang is just an old man who is about to die. Less than a year. The Emperor of Tang nodded slightly, as if he had thought of something. Suddenly, he changed the topic and asked, "I heard that Yun Er's body was cured by family Su? Such medical skills, I truly admire you." The Emperor of Tang sighed with emotion. Others might not know about Su Yueyun's recovery, but how could it be hidden from the Emperor of Tang? After the Emperor of Tang finished speaking, his eyes fell on Su Qin. He was actually quite curious about Su Qin, not only because Su Qin dared to say that he would not live long, but also because Su Qin always exuded an aloof temperament. One had to know that any man at Su Qin's age would want nothing more than to make a name for himself, but Su Qin was different. At least, the Emperor of Tang did not see any desire for power or wealth in Su Qin. And according to the Emperor of Tang's understanding, there were only two kinds of people in the world who had such a mentality. One was the kind of great saint and great sage who had truly seen through the world. The other was a brat who had never experienced the benefits of power. "Do you want to ask me about my body?" Su Qin did not want to waste time with the Emperor of Tang, and asked directly. "I do have that thought." The Emperor of Tang's expression did not change as he admitted it. Ever since he knew that Su Yueyun was cured by Su Qin, he had this thought. One had to know that Su Yueyun's body was something that countless imperial doctors could do nothing about. Even the old imperial doctor by the Emperor of Tang's side could not do anything. But in the end, it was cured by Su Qin? I've already said it last time. You don't have long to live. Just wait for your death. Su Qin looked at the Emperor of Tang again and shook his head. The Emperor of Tang's body was not seriously injured, but his origin was seriously damaged. Coupled with the fact that Shou Yuan's great limit was approaching, he was basically dead. If it was just a loss of origin, Su Qin would have a solution, but Shou Yuan's great limit is the law of heaven and earth, just like the rising of the sun and the setting of the moon. There is no other way except to become a grade 1 great grandmaster and extend Shou Yuan's lifespan. Su Qin's words made Crown Prince Li Sheng and Su Yueyun's faces turn white again. This time, Su Qin not only repeated, "You don't have long to live," but also added the words, "Just wait for your death." Little brother family Su is really interesting. When the Emperor of Tang heard Su Qin's words, not only was he not angry, he even laughed. If it was decades ago, the Emperor of Tang might have been angry when he heard Su Qin's words, but now his body is constantly damaged, and he has long looked down on life and death. Over the years, the Emperor of Tang was tired of listening to flattery, but now listening to Su Qin's truth, he had a very special feeling. It was as if at this moment he was no longer the Emperor of the Empire of Tang, but an ordinary old man. In fact, you don't have to think so much. Even a legend can only live for hundreds of years as Shoyun. Su Qin said sincerely. For example, he only has 970 years left as Shoyuan. Although he can live dozens of times longer than ordinary people, he will still die of old age. Martial arts legend. The Emperor of Tang was slightly stunned, and then smiled again. Little brother family Su. With your ability, it's a bit unfair to stay here all day. Why don't you join the Imperial Hospital and chat with me? After the Emperor of Tang finished laughing, he asked casually. As soon as he said this, Crown Prince Li Sheng and Su Yueyun's eyes suddenly lit up. The Emperor of Tang's words obviously meant to promote Su Qin. The Imperial Hospital in the palace was independent of any institution in the palace. It only listened to the orders of the Emperor of Tang. Although it seemed to have no power, it actually had a very high status. No need. Su Qin directly refused. The Emperor of Tang did not force Su Qin. After a few more words, he got up and left. After the Emperor of Tang had completely walked out, Crown Prince Li Sheng and Su Yueyun hurried to Su Qin. Third brother, you're really... Crown Prince Li Sheng did not know what to say. Su Qin and the Emperor of Tang spoke in such a tone. If it were anyone else, they would have been dragged out and beheaded hundreds of times. But Su Qin was completely fine, and the Emperor of Tang valued him very much. Not long after the Emperor of Tang left, Su Qin was also ready to go back. A moment later, Su Qin returned to the right spring square. This is also my temporary residence. Why don't I set up a heaven and earth formation so that I don't know when someone comes by when I'm not here? Su Qin sat cross-legged and fell into deep thought. After signing in at the Shaolin Temple for almost 30 years, Su Qin had obtained dozens of heaven and earth formations. These formations had different uses and were biased towards different aspects. Now Su Qin only needed to choose one of these dozens of formations. Which heaven and earth formation should I choose? Su Qin touched his chin, a thoughtful look in his eyes. The essence-gathering Holy Land formation, no need. This formation is mainly used to gather essence chi of heaven and earth. It's too noisy and I don't need it. The demon-subduing formation, no. This formation's evil chi is too strong. Although it won't affect me, I'll get tired of it after a long time. The Sumeru Meson formation, this formation's requirements for materials are too high. I can't get them in a short time. One by one, the heaven and earth formations flashed through Su Qin's mind. Finally, he decided on a certain formation. The 5 Elements Chaos formation. Creatures under Arhat will be confused after entering, and time and space will be reversed. Requires 120 jade stones. Please go to vinegar #lu #air #when #shue. Chapter 109. You're the one. 5 Elements Reversal Array. Su Qin made a decision in his heart. This heaven and earth array completely met Su Qin's needs. Under the cover of the array, even if outsiders entered the right spring square, they would completely lose their sense of direction and would only go around in place. And Su Qin, as the owner of the array, would also know immediately if someone broke into the array. Moreover, the 5 Elements Reversal Array didn't require many jade stones, only 120 pieces, and it was also very simple to set up. With Su Qin's strength, it was enough to complete in a few seconds. Just as Su Qin was signing in and cultivating, the imperial court was in turmoil. The Emperor of Tang knew that his end was near and had begun to pave the way for Crown Prince Li Sheng. In fact, the Emperor of Tang had been doing this for decades, but in the past, it was mostly done step by step and it was difficult for outsiders to notice. But now the Emperor of Tang didn't intend to hide it, or it could be said that it couldn't be hidden at all. If he wanted the Crown Prince to smoothly ascend the throne and sit firmly on it, some people must be completely cleaned up. For several days, a large number of civil officials and military generals were imprisoned on various charges every day. These civil officials and military generals were basically completely on the side of a certain prince. If it was before, the Emperor of Tang wouldn't be so ruthless. For these officials who had already taken sides, at most, he would transfer them away and exile them. But now, the Emperor of Tang knew that his time was running out. In addition, he had been in charge of the imperial court for decades, and no one dared to disobey the imperial edict. It was only at this moment that everyone realized that the old emperor sitting on the throne was actually so ruthless in his methods. Suddenly, the entire Chang and city was turbulent, and the civil and military officials in the imperial court were even more terrified, fearing that they would be within the scope of the Emperor of Tang's purge. And Su Qin also heard about all this. He often strolled around the imperial palace and occasionally heard the palace maids and eunuchs chatting about which fourth-rank official was imprisoned today, and which third-rank official would return to his hometown tomorrow. There were no secrets hidden in the imperial palace, not to mention a major event that alarmed the entire court. After Su Qin found out about this, he was too lazy to care about it. The Emperor of Tang did all this for the sake of Crown Prince Li Sheng. There was no conflict with Su Qin. He just needed to watch quietly. Half a month later, in the imperial court, the Emperor of Tang personally called the princes over. In front of the court officials, the Emperor of Tang asked the princes if they wanted to live in a prosperous and stable fief outside Chang and city. As soon as he said this, the princes' faces all turned pale. The Emperor of Tang's words were clearly intended to send them outside so that Crown Prince Li Sheng could smoothly ascend the throne. The other officials looked at the princes sympathetically. After half a month of purges, most of the officials in the imperial court had been replaced. The remaining officials who had not been replaced were either very capable and had never taken sides, or had always listened to the Emperor of Tang's orders. "Father, you can't be so heartless." A prince suddenly knelt on the ground and looked at the Emperor of Tang with red eyes. "I'm also your son. My mother is the Empress. By right, the position of Crown Prince should be mine." Tears streamed down the prince's face. Among the princes, the one with the greatest chance of inheriting the throne was none other than him. But unfortunately, since Crown Prince Li Sheng came to Chang, and everything changed. Not only did he lose his power, but even the Empress was directly imprisoned in the cold palace. "The Empress?" The Emperor of Tang sneered. "Take him away and send him to his fief. Without my order, he is not allowed to step into Chang." "As you wish." Immediately, the Forbidden Army came in and dragged the princes out. Seeing this scene, the remaining princes immediately realized that they couldn't do anything about it. They could only helplessly leave Chang and then head to their fief. Seeing this scene, Prince Sun's eyes flashed, but he didn't say anything. He could see the Emperor of Tang's determination. At this time, no matter what he said, it would be impossible to change the Emperor of Tang's mind. After this meeting, everyone knew that the prince's power was gone. Crown Prince Li Sheng was the future the Emperor of Tang. As for the Emperor of Tang, after personally sending away the princes, his body became much weaker. Most of the time, he was lying on the dragon bed with eunuch Zhao accompanying him. As for state affairs, it was up to Crown Prince Li Sheng to discuss with the officials. Fortunately, Crown Prince Li Sheng often came into contact with these matters in the past few years. The Emperor of Tang also deliberately cultivated this aspect, so there wasn't much of a mess. During this period, Su Yueyun often complained to Su Qin that Crown Prince Li Sheng saw him a lot less. However, Su Yueyun knew what to do. He understood that Crown Prince Li Sheng was facing a major event in the Empire of Tang. If he didn't handle it carefully, it would cause turmoil in the Empire of Tang and cause countless people to suffer. "Third brother, let's go home today. I haven't seen Dad in a long time." Su Yueyun found Su Qin and said. Su Qin nodded. "It just so happens that he has nothing to do now. Today's sign-in opportunity has also been used. Going back to the family, Su won't delay anything." The two returned to the Su mansion under the escort of the Forbidden Army. Since the last assassination in the Imperial Palace, Crown Prince Li Sheng and Su Yueyun would be accompanied by the Forbidden Army whenever they went out, not giving any chance for assassins to assassinate them. You're back?" When Su Shimin saw Su Yueyun and Su Qin, he immediately ordered the servants to go out and prepare. "Dad, where are big brother and second brother?" Su Yueyun returned to the Su mansion in a much better mood and casually asked. The two of them, Su Shimin shook his head. There have been too many changes in the army recently. Cheng Hao and Qing Yu are very busy. I see. Su Yueyun nodded. The Emperor of Tang has been cleaning up the imperial court for half a month. Who knows how many civil and military officials have been replaced? Naturally, the army was also deeply affected. Don't worry, I've already sent someone to inform the two of them. They should be back by now. Su Shimin opened his mouth and said, the army that Su Sungho and Su Qingyu were in was in Chang and City, very close to the Su mansion. Just as Su Shimin was speaking. Dad, little sister is back? Su Sungho and Su Qingyu strode into the Su mansion. What's wrong with being so casual? Yun-er is now the crown princess, you should be careful. Su Shimin frowned. As soon as he said this, Su Sungho and Su Qingyu immediately shrunk their heads. All right, Dad, we're all family, Su Yueyun didn't mind and said with a smile. Just as they were talking and laughing, Su Qin narrowed his eyes and looked at a jade pendant on Su Sungho's body. This jade pendant was crystal clear and was obviously a priceless item. Su Sungho hung it on his body, probably to show off. However, in Su Qin's eyes, the surface of the jade pendant was faintly covered in black gas. This black gas kept spreading and condensing, emitting a gloomy and evil aura. This is Nanzhao's witchcraft? Su Qin frowned slightly, his thoughts fluctuating. Please go to vinegar #lu #air #when #shui. Chapter 110. Although martial arts were the mainstream in this world, other than martial arts, there were also traces of the existence of other extraordinary powers. For example, witchcraft and curses. Most of the witchcraft and curses came from Nanzhao. Nanzhao was located in the southwest, and there were many undeveloped areas. It was ruled by a sect called moon worship. Even the king of Nanzhao was a disciple of moon worship. The leader of moon worship was a master of witchcraft and curses. He was extremely powerful. There was once a grade 1 great grandmaster who didn't believe it and wanted to sneak into moon worship, but he was scared away by an inexplicable aura. Witchcraft and curses were unpredictable and often killed people without leaving a trace. However, witchcraft and curses had a fatal flaw, which was that they were controlled by qi and blood. People with strong qi and blood could almost ignore most witchcraft and curses. Martial artists, on the other hand, had a strong qi and blood, which was the nemesis of all witchcraft and curses. This was also the reason why the moon worship was holed up in Nanzhao. Su Qin didn't expect to see traces of witchcraft in Chang and City. Su Sungho noticed Su Qin's gaze and immediately picked up the jade and said, "Little Qin, have you also noticed the extraordinary thing about this jade pendant? It's strange. When I went out this morning, this jade pendant happened to fall at my feet." At this point, Su Qinghao said proudly, "It seems that when one's luck is good, it's unstoppable. According to my judgment, this jade pendant is worth at least 1,000 taels of silver." Su Sungho said, "The value of silver in the Empire of Tang was very high. Usually, a normal family of 4 would only spend a few taels of silver a year. 1,000 taels of silver was enough for a person to buy a house in Chang and City and live the life of a rich man. Even for today's family Su, 1,000 taels of silver was not a small amount." Su Yueyun glanced at the jade pendant in Su Sungho's hand and nodded. Indeed, the material of this jade pendant is very good. It can be said to be rare. What kind of treasures had she not seen in the palace? When he first saw the jade pendant, he was sure that it was valuable. Picked it up? A cold look appeared on Su Qin's face. He was almost certain that someone was targeting Su Sungho. Not to mention the value of this jade pendant, just the witchcraft curse on it was not something an ordinary person could do. Su Sungho's picked up was probably just his own wishful thinking. "There's something wrong with this jade pendant," Su Qin said directly without any hidden dangers. "Is there a problem?" Su Sungho was shocked. When he picked up the jade pendant, he also had doubts in his heart. However, at that time, he subconsciously felt that he was lucky and didn't think too much about it. At this moment, When he heard Su Qin's words, his face suddenly became serious. "Little Qin, take another look." Su Sungho immediately took off the jade pendant and handed it to Su Qin. Su Qin took the jade pendant and looked at it carefully. Regarding the witchcraft curse, he had only seen a few descriptions in the Sutra Pavilion of the Shaolin Temple. As for the real witchcraft curse, it was the first time that he had seen it. Su Qin gently stroked the jade pendant, opened the eyes of truth, and slowly poured his divine sense into the jade pendant. In an instant, a delicate woman with a thin veil appeared in Su Qin's mind. She should be the real owner of the jade pendant. Was the witchcraft curse also placed on it by her? Su Qin's thoughts were fluctuating. Su Sungho obviously didn't get this jade pendant by coincidence. It was intentional. The witchcraft curse on the jade pendant was not a direct curse, but a faint sense of control. Someone wanted to use this jade pendant to control Su Sungho. Ever since Su Qin came to Chang, even if he lived in the East Palace, he would use his divine sense to scan the family Su every once in a while. Therefore, even if Su Qin didn't come back today, he would find out about the abnormality of this jade pendant by tomorrow at the latest. No matter what the result was, Su Sungho would not be controlled. But no matter what, someone had made a move on the family Su. Su Qin opened the eyes of truth and locked onto the qi left by the delicate veil woman deep in the jade pendant. The next moment, Su Qin walked out of the Su mansion, raised his head slightly, and looked at the entire Chang'an city. He saw countless qi permeating the air, far and near, strong and weak. Finally, Su Qin looked at the corner of the east side of Chang'an city through the eyes of truth. "Got you." Su Qin's expression was calm. He raised his right hand, held his fingers like a sword, and gently slashed down. Buzz! An invisible sword essence flashed and disappeared. At the same time, in a room of an inn in Chang'an city, an exotic woman with a thin veil on her face sat quietly on the bed. "Saintess, the jade pendant was sent out this morning. Su Sungho of the family Su is now carrying it as a treasure." A white-haired old woman walked into the room, stopped not far from the veiled woman, and whispered. "Got it." The veiled woman said softly. "Saintess." The white-haired old woman hesitated for a moment and couldn't help but ask, "Heart control curse is a secret technique of our holy church, and it requires 30% of blood essence to release. It's almost impossible for martial artists below the upper realm to resist its invasion. Is it worth it to use it on Su Sungho of the family Su?" The white-haired old woman whispered. In her opinion, Su Sungho was just a 7th-grade martial artist, not even in the middle realm. There was no need to use the heart control curse. "It's worth it." The veiled woman glanced at the white-haired old woman. "Family Su is the family of the current crown princess. As long as our holy church controls the family Su, it is equivalent to planting a nail in the empire of Tang. At that time, the great cause of our holy church will really take root in the Central Plains." When the veiled woman said this, a trace of fanaticism appeared in her eyes. "After that, what should we do with the family Su?" The white-haired old woman thought for a while and asked. "After that?" A smile appeared on the veiled woman's face. "After that, Su Sungho and the entire family Su will be sacrificed to the moon god. Moon worship worships the moon and believes that the moon god lives on the moon. Every once in a while, they must sacrifice creatures to the moon god." The white-haired old woman bowed. "Come out with me." The veiled woman slowly got up and was about to walk out of the inn. Suddenly, at this moment, the veiled woman's body stiffened. She could clearly feel that the life origin goo in her body was frantically warning, as if she was facing some kind of life and death crisis. "What's going on? What the hell is going on?" The veiled woman was frightened, but she couldn't find the source. However, the next moment, when the veiled woman walked to the window and subconsciously looked at the sky, her expression suddenly froze, and her eyes were full of disbelief. "This is..." In the veiled woman's eyes, an illusory and invisible sword intent seemed to come from outside the sky. It continued to grow, as if supporting the world and filling all her sight. Please go to vinegar #lu #air #when #shui. Welcome to Immortal Cultivation Audiobooks, your gateway to the mystical world of Xianxia. Dive into legendary tales of martial arts, spiritual growth, and immortal ascension. Here, we bring you full-length English audiobooks of the best Wuxia and Xianxia stories, from young prodigies to ancient sect wars. Perfect for fans of Against the Gods, martial world, and tales of demons and gods.